Hi friends, David here from Above AVL, and today on the channel we're going to talk about building some really neat LED set designs. So when it comes to using LED product, LED video walls in different configurations, sometimes people get really scared, and which is why we're going to walk you through just some basic stuff, because when you're putting together an LED wall in a non-standard shape that's not just like a 16:9 wall, then often there's really kind of two big hurdles, right? The first is, how do I do it? How do I make sure my stuff looks right and it's not all smushed? And then number two is, how do I create content for it? Because ultimately, what we want to answer in this video in the second half is, okay, how do we make it easy to make stuff that looks good on a video wall segment that's not a typical square or rectangle? Because it's not easy to make the stuff look good, in my experience, unless you're dealing with a big budget and a lot of time to work on it. You're just not going to do all that much with it, and it's not going to be worth the time and effort. So today we're looking at vertical strips, okay? So we're going to build here in just a minute two different examples of vertical strips. The first is going to be 2 wide, okay, and we're going to go 3/4 tall here. And the second is just going to be 1 wide. So let's talk about some of the differences there. Whether we're building 2 wide or 1 wide, any LED wall is either going to start at the bottom, like we are here ground supported, or it's going to start at the top. Usually that's with the fly bar that comes with the LED wall itself, right? If it's hanging, it'll go this way. If it's sitting on the ground, it will use these pins that are coming up, and the wall will stack on top of it. And then, we're going to go vertically, and we've got to attach it to something, right? In the case of freestanding single panels, where you're just going 1 wide and you're going up, most of the time a dedicated LED wall ground support isn't the right answer, because those are typically 2 wide at the very minimum. Even if you're going 2 wide, if you don't have a ground support and it's just kind of a one-off thing, then often it makes sense just to use truss with a truss base and attach it to that. So how do you attach your LED wall to truss or something similar? More often than not, we recommend clamps like these. These are the ones that we get from DVS. They're fantastic. This is a Visitor Wall one. It may be particular to your wall. These aren't super generic, but it really just is a clamp, like a lighting type clamp, typical Cheeseboro clamp, with an attachment point to attach to your wall and then be able to tighten down really nice to attach that wall back to whatever it's attaching to. So in the case of a single panel here today, we're going to use a Chauvet DJ Flex stand, okay? This is a cheaper pipe and base option, where we've got a pipe here, we've got a base here, boom, drop that on the ground, and we've got a pipe. Now, the nice thing about the Flex stand, like many of these, is I can orient the pole on the back of the base, okay? Which means that the weight from the wall, by the time I drop the TRC on here, okay, or whatever clamp you've got with your particular wall, right, the actual wall is sitting closer to the middle of the base, meaning that I will need less weight or sandbags. Now, when it comes to the engineering side of a wall like this, you're typically going to need weight on your base, right? Because an LED wall is itself generally fairly heavy, even individual panels, and it's cantilevered out in front on something that's on a floor base. Your mileage may vary. Every wall is going to be different, but make sure to be safe and have plenty of counterweight on it. Obviously, every situation is different, so we can't make specific advice here. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take a little pause here and come back to, like a cooking show, with 1 wall here and a single wall here, and then talk about some ways, show you how to map them using a modern processor, and show you some ways that you can integrate it either with a larger main screen or by itself. And we're back. Slightly sweatier than before, but back. No, it's not too bad. As you can see here, we've got our 2 walls behind us. Couple things to note if you're new with LED walls and configuration is, if you have an unconfigured processor, no configuration into it, every panel will show the same thing, which is the upper left-hand corner of your input source, in this case, APC. Another thing to notice, you're going to see it's blatantly obvious on camera that these 4 panels are brighter. Everybody else is pretty much darker. Okay, that's because brightness in a novastar panel is typically stored, it's always stored really, in the panel itself. So you can adjust it in the processor, but it's stored in the panel. So using different panels that did different things on the last event means you see different brightnesses, but that's all easy to fix. So what we want to do now is hop into the computer, do a quick setup, and show you some content on these walls and kind of how they work so that you can begin working with them in your next event. All right, so we're here and I'm just going to launch VMP, the software to configure most modern novastar processors, where it is at the time of this recording that there is a software coming out for those older processors that don't support VMP that's better than Nova LCT. So now we can go ahead and we see here that we've got 12 panels. So we're just going to map it really quick. We see mapping pulls up, tells us the wiring order there, but I know this is the front of screen, so I am actually doing this. Mapping it to match my screen. And then we'll do my second one. Boom. And we'll go ahead, as I mentioned, brightness is mixed. Just say 8% because that's probably going to look best on camera. Perfect. So now we want to discuss basically like, okay, how do you make these things look good and look right with your mapping? So as you can see, just really simple. Actually, let's run some content on it quick. So I'm going to take them both and get them off the start bar. Pop up some of my backdrop video, like our star field that we use a lot here on the show. Now what we can see here is we've got our two different walls here, our double wide and our single wide. And you can start to see on a stage how these can really add to the look, especially when you're just using backgrounds. So let's talk about sending content to non-standard sizes of display. If you are running too wide like this, you can potentially, depending on what kind of software you're using, you could format content with text on a too wide or larger type of wall. If you're only one wide, then if you want to do text or graphics like logos, things like that, then you're going to want to create that content custom for your strips. Like you have multiple of these strips going across the stage, you would want to create that custom content and map it, usually using an external program like Resolume or something like that. Okay, but if you're just, outputting, just doing backgrounds, visuals, etc., even a program like Proclaim or ProPresenter, popular slide programs for the church world, you can send out a different output that's backgrounds only, doesn't have your text on it, and a lot of time that's going to work well. Now, back into the computer really quick. If we look here on our screen, we basically are always going to be, or it usually makes sense, to basically set our layer size as a 16:9, because that's usually what's coming in, what a computer is going to want to drive, and then arrange our backgrounds on it, right? So for example, if we had, different, like 3 different stripes, we could just do that with a little gap between them. You could butt them all up together like this. The only thing you're going to notice is when you do that is if something goes side to side, it jumps from one panel to the other, right? It would literally jump, it would come off the edge. In this case, it's coming off the edge here and it shows up right there, just a split second later. So if something moves fast, it could be disorienting. That's where, in the software, if you put a gap in there that looks like the real life gap, then it's going to look more natural if things swipe across. This may or may not actually matter in your context. This is where you can test, play with it, and figure out what to do. But one of the huge benefits, as I mentioned, of newer novastar processors is the ability to be able to lay things out within their own VMP software and do some really interesting stuff. Now, if you're trying to squeeze every pixel out of your processor, then yeah, you probably, and you're doing interesting different shape stuff, you're probably going to end up using Resolume or something like that, slicing up your display and sending it out. That's beyond the scope of this here. What I want to do is really enable you that if you've never done something creative with LED video before, but you're thinking about it, then starting with some basic shapes, in this case, just vertical strips, putting them around your stage, it's not all that difficult in terms of the technology side, and it can really make a big impact. Another one that you can do, which is really popular, is to just stretch your display ultra wide in your presentation program, and then do your 16:9 image in the middle, and on the outside do some strips, okay, that are outside of that. seamless background can look really nice. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video and just how easy it really is to do some really interesting stuff with LED video that can really spice up your stage and make it interesting. If you watch this and you've been inspired, you say, okay, I want to get started with LED video, at my church, my band, whatever group, a production company that I work with, but you just don't know what to buy, head over to aboveavl.com. We've got an LED wall calculator that's going to help you figure out what you need, how many panels it'll take, and then help us quote that out to you. Biggest thing with LED walls is you absolutely do not want to go with the cheapest option on the market. You will be hating yourself for years to come. Not only do they often look terrible on video and are unreliable, but they can just be darn frustrating to keep running. So if that sounds good, head over to aboveavl.com, check out our LED wall calculator, just put in your info, even if it's just a test, and we'll reach out and we'll be able to quote that out to you, find the best option for you. Maybe you need something that's in stock, maybe you don't mind waiting, and find it at your personalized price. If that sounds good, we'll see you over at aboveavl.com at our LED wall calculator, or just at our wall packages. But we can make any package, any size, any shape, and we'd love to help you do that. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Bye.